Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, one of the big reasons I record this podcast every day is to try and feature as many voices and tech communities from around the world, not just Silicon Valley. And today, I'm excited to be taking you on a trip to Bulgaria, where Hristo Borisov, co-founder and CEO of Payhawk, is waiting to speak with us. And Payhawk is an all-in-one integrated finance platform for businesses that combines credit cards, payments, expenses, cash management and pre-accounting all into one platform to give businesses maximum control and visibility over their spending. And the company was founded in London and headquartered there, but it has Bulgarian roots and recently raised $20 million from Klarna's investors QED. And its customers includes the likes of Zenloop, Nexo, and so many more. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Bulgaria, where we're going to talk about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hey everyone, my name is Hristo Borisov. I'm currently a co-founder and CEO of Payhawk, a company that is, dubbed to be changing the payments world as we know it today. I have been in tech for the last 14 years. Initially started my career as an engineer in a company called Telus. Spent there, 3 years, and then moved to product management and led a lot of our products at Telus. And then we got acquired by a public US company, which was the biggest exit of a company in Central and Eastern Europe for $265 million in 2014. I saw the company growing from about 60, 70 employees to 850 for a very short period of time. Now I'm decided to go back to the being scrappy and miserable without a salary for a few years, and decided to go and build this thing called Payhawk.
And going back to your origin story there, can you remember exactly what it was that lit that spark, that passion for technology and the worlds of finance, how they collided and what put you on this path? Can you remember what that was?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think buying my first computer was, where everything started. Yeah. I was still in school, but, internet was still this dial-up experience that you had to, do 30 minutes a week because it was so expensive. But I always had a passion for computers and learning how the computers operate. And then it wasn't until I was just about to get into a university and my idea was to study photography. And then for 5 months before that, I was already accepted at a university. I wanted to study, journalism, mass communication, and photography. And then a friend of my father called me and said, my printer broke. And I know you're good with computers. Can you fix it? And I said, well, I'm good with computers and software, but I don't know how to fix a printer. So I went there and fixed his printer. And then 3 weeks later, he called me and said, well, one of our developers quit. So I'm looking for a developer. Can you stop by? I said, well, I'm not exactly a developer, but I'll stop by. So I went there and I went through an interview, and the guys, saw that I have some potential, but I haven't done any of this professionally. And they said, here is 200 leva, which let's say translates to about 80 pounds. That was in 2006. Go and buy some books and come back in 2 weeks. And I went there, bought books on databases and, visualbasic.net at the time that I needed to learn. And after 2 weeks, I showed up there and I became a developer.
Wow.
And then at university, obviously I said, okay, I already did whole summer of being a developer, so I should be studying computer science. And then after a year into that, I said, okay, I need to also do something else. So I decided to also sign up for business. So I went with a double degree.
What an amazing story. I absolutely love that. And of course, that path eventually led to Payhawk, which is an all-in-one integrated finance platform for businesses that is aiming to combine credit cards, payments, expenses, cash management, and pre-accounting all into one easy-to-manage platform. But can you expand on that and the kind of problems that you set out to solve for businesses and ultimately the technology that makes it all possible too?
Yeah, in short, we describe Payhawk as a next-generation business banking. So at the end of the day, it is a specialized tool for businesses to manage all company spend. We don't position as a new bank, even though behind the scenes we're a full new bank. So you get your IBAN, you have your ability to make payments, receive payments, issue cards, and so on. We position as a specialized tool focus on managing your payments as a company. Where you can manage all financial instruments in a single system. You can issue physical and virtual cards, also digital cards. You can issue also team cards. You can manage company subscriptions. You can automate all the accounts payable, workflows, and everything related to spend policies. So with Payhawk, you can actually implement the spend policy directly on the company cards and be able to automatically collect all the expenses so that your employees don't have to go and do expense reports after they use the company cards. So we make it really easy for companies to adopt cards and make it extremely easy for every employee to spend money across the company, while it is under the control of the finance team. So there is zero overhead for the finance team and everything is fully automated. So all the financial information is fully reconciled in the company ERP system. We position as an innovation layer on top of banks. So we really see the play and long-term strategy to work alongside banks. We don't want to go and position Payhawk as a new bank, which is a little bit hard if you, for example, some of our customers include, for example, Luxembourg Airlines. If you go to Luxembourg Airlines and you tell them, well, I'm a new bank, I'm going to replace your bank that you have been using for the last 65 years, that conversation is going to fly very well. But if you position Payhawk as an innovation layer on top of your traditional bank that helps you manage payments and spend with all employees with zero chasing of receipts, zero data entry, and full control on every payment, that becomes a very strategic tool for the finance team. So I think one of the things we try to do with Payhawk is we currently see that finance teams use a really large stack of tools that they try to integrate together. So they have one app for expense management for employees that don't have cards, that they have to spend their own money. They have another solution for corporate cards that they give to the senior management. Then they have another solution for managing accounts payable and paying bills. Or reimbursing employees, and then another tool for approvals and workflows on those invoices. And Payhawk is, even though our spearhead and main solution is our company cards, that we are also allowing businesses to manage all the rest of the payment methods fully integrated within Payhawk.
And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today was after I was reading about your belief around how and why fragmentation in fintech could be coming to an end and how the market is at a tipping point of consolidation. Can you expand on that belief for everybody listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as the infrastructure for financial services matures, which is currently happening with, I would say, the first wave of fintech innovation that started appearing in 2016, 17, also gave birth to a lot of infrastructure players on top of those fintech companies on which those fintech companies are building. As the infrastructure improves, we are going to see more and more competition on the fintech space. And because a lot of companies compete on the same, let's say, infrastructure, they need to innovate in other areas. And the most typical area for a startup to innovate is around the software, right? And this is where we see predominantly a lot of players moving with a very solid software stack on top of the financial services, which is actually a very, very good thing for the industry. Because if you think about banks only care about giving you an instrument, meaning a company card. As soon as you pay, the bank has done its job. But then there is a whole life cycle that needs to happen. A lot of problems that needs to be solved after this payment goes and is reconciled in the company ERP system. Somebody needs to extract data. Somebody needs to approve this. And in the first place, even the employee wasn't sure whether he's allowed to make some payments. So all of this is kind of a problem that we are solving. And we also see a lot of other businesses taking the fintech part as granted and trying to really build, not only about payments, but also about receiving, money, and also about managing, the whole spectrum of payments in a much more solid software stack.
And I also read that you believe that further down the line, fintechs will predominantly provide software rather than financial services, and the industry could even end up being dubbed Techfin rather than fintech. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you are what you earn, right? Mm. And I think if most of the companies are betting on software to be a main revenue driver, that positions them more of a software companies and tech companies. And I think at the end of the day, this is where we actually see the big synergy with banks. Mm-hmm. Because I think banks, which unfortunately today still don't see it this way, but their really big unfair advantage is the huge infrastructure that they have built and the huge compliance and processes and regulatory compliance that they need to go through across multiple geographies. So you have banks like HSBC, which is, has been tapped as the world's local bank. This means that they have so many locations and such an infrastructure that it's going to be extremely expensive and inviable for a financial service company to start build this from scratch. Mm-hmm. So what we see is that a lot of those, infrastructure providers, even though they are not banks today, they can be banks in 5 to 10 years. They're going to really lay out the ground for fintech companies to step on them and innovate and really build a next generation of software tools on top of these infrastructures. And that's why I think software would be something that we're going to see more and more in the financial services business. And this is where also the big disruption with the banks is coming, because it's not all about having just a card or payment. I mean, there are hundreds of solutions you can use now to issue cards or to make payments, for example, in market like UK. The question is, what is the most efficient and cost-effective solution on the market today?
And those synergies that you mentioned really interest me, because I think traditionally over the years, we've been talking about disruption and all these services competing against each other. But do you think that big banks and fintechs actually need to coexist? And if they do, what will future collaborations offer to both parties?
Well, I think there are very clear synergies between the two. So big banks can learn a lot about user experience, innovation, and building software from startups. Vice versa, fintech companies and startup companies can actually benefit a lot from the experience of those banks. First of all, owning huge amount of data that can be used for a lot more. In general, if you're trying to build an intelligent software, you need data. And I think data is one big asset for banks, and then their infrastructure footprint that they have is another big asset for banks that can be leveraged for fintech companies or software companies in general, to create synergies. I think it is still a little bit of a land and grab and, kind of a stage where everybody is concerned that, they're going to be just being wiped out. I don't think that is going to happen to most banks because at the end of the day, still the trust that those banks have and the regulators' pressure that they have to be part of the monetary system is really big. And as many fancy fintechs or startups companies that are entering the space we still need to respect and collaborate and look for ways to work with the banks, because I think there is a lot of advantage that needs to happen. And unfortunately, the financial services market is very fragmented market. You have many geographies, many regulations, many currencies, and that complexity can add up. And I think that the sooner banks realize that they have a massive opportunity to work with fintechs, they're going to find, some of the early, banks that realize that are going to be the winners.
And as for Payhawk, I'm curious, do you have any use cases that you could possibly share just to help listeners understand how Payhawk reimagines the way payment works by simplifying and automating processes, and also ultimately what and how it can help the average finance team save?
Yeah. So first of all, with Payhawk, the whole concept of an expense report is missing, right? Yeah. when employees spend money, they don't have to, file expense reports. They need to file receipts and submit all of this information. They can actually just use the company card. All of this information is in real time available for the finance team. All the receipts are attached to the actual payments, and all of this information is fully extracted by Payhawk. So Payhawk, as soon as it receives an invoice or a receipt, it does data extraction in 60 languages and automatically pushes this data to the accounting ERP system. So you actually have the payment, the proof of payment being the invoice or the receipt with the data extracted, fully reconciled and booked into the company company ERP or accounting system. So that's the first streamline. Without Payhawk, there is a lot of chasing of receipts, a lot of data entry, a lot of, was the employee allowed to spend those money, any kind of an enforcement of spend policy on paper. So all of these things is fully automated. The other thing is when it comes to employees that don't have a company card. So they can still submit receipts and they can be fully reimbursed from Payhawk with a single click instead of actually gathering the receipts, gathering the paper, extracting that information, going through an approval workflow, and then going and wiring this money from a traditional bank account. One of the innovative things we do, and that we're just announcing on Tuesday, 5th of October, is a very lucrative 3% cashback program on all payments that go through Payhawk through the cards. And they're capped at the amount of your subscription to Payhawk. So, which means that if you're spending through Payhawk, you're actually ending up paying nothing for the software part. And this is the best of both worlds. We give companies a next generation corporate card that they can manage and fully automate their spend, whether it comes to travel spend or managing subscriptions or managing projects with employees. And then they get an enterprise grade software that does the automation, the approvals, and the spend policies, the subscription management, fully free of charge if they're spending through the cards. So this is something where we are just introducing, and we are already seeing a great demand from customers by using a software to get and earn this 3% cashback to pay for the whole subscription.
And I also read before you came on the podcast today that you recently raised $20 million from Klarna's investors, QED. I mean, can you expand on that and what it means to you and your team?
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity. So QED are the founders of Capital One. They are the people that set up that bank in the early 90s in the US and get it to being one of the top banks in the US. They're extremely experienced people. And they as well understand the role of the banks and the role of fintechs and how they can collaborate to create the next level of digital solution out there. So it is a big opportunity for us. We are currently heavily expanding our team. So right now we are about 65 employees, aiming to be about 95 employees by the end of the year. We are also working on some very exciting financial products that we will be announcing. And, we are currently feeling in a very good spot, getting into a market where there is no reason why a finance team should not use a solution like Payhawk. It pays for itself with the 3% cashback. It fully automates all the payments in their department, and they get an enterprise level product free of charge. And these things we would not be able to do if we didn't have such kind of an investment where we can be very aggressive on the market and be able to, instead of spending marketing dollars on ads and clicks and, other things, we can actually reinvest them and subsidize our subscriptions with a very lucrative cashback program. And that's only possible if you have a very strong investment.
A quick timeout from the interview to mention HireAct, the sponsors of the Tech Talks Daily podcast this month. So recruiters, are you or your business spending too long in your email and waiting for responses? Did you know that with HireAct, you can skip the headache of traditional hiring? You can view resumes, exchange contact info and interview candidates in seconds. You can also get curated candidate recommendations that fit your job requirements. You can chat directly with your ideal candidates, accelerate your hiring process 10 times faster than those painful traditional ways. And best of all, it's a totally free download from the Apple and Google Play Store. So download HireAct from the Apple or Google Play Store, give it a try, and let me know what you think. But now, back to today's interview. Well, it's been a huge year for you guys with that recent announcement and the funding opportunity there. Is there anything else you can share about the company's upcoming growth plans and what you're focusing in on the future as we begin to exit 2021 and think about life in 2022?
Yeah, but I would say one of the exciting things is that we definitely see companies being fully transformed during this COVID crisis. I think we see companies seeing this as an opportunity to revamp their kind of financial stack. They're getting back on travel. So that is a very good thing for the industry. We start to see a lot of live events, a lot of customers who, unfortunately, some customers that were doing, let's say events management, project management work and so on, that had to go out of business. Early last year, but now we're seeing these customers coming back and saying, well, I'm getting operations back and I would like to, continue, using the product. So we are seeing a general increase of spend and turnover across customers. And a big part of that is really the recovery of the economy. So in terms of announcement on our side, we are hiring aggressively in the UK, in Berlin, in Barcelona, and in Sofia. So if anybody is interested in joining us as a company on that exciting journey, please head out to payhawk.com/careers, where you can find all of our current open positions.
I'm glad you mentioned the offices in the different countries across Europe there, because on this Daily Tech podcast, I always try and cover stories from all over the world and how tech companies are thriving outside of Silicon Valley. And obviously, you're talking to me today in Sofia, in Bulgaria. Is there a big tech startup scene in Bulgaria that you could just tell the listeners about? Is it predominantly fintech related, or is it much broader than that over there?
Well, I think we do have a very strong, IT sector in general. I think from the last numbers I have is about maybe 4 to 5% of the GDP. Mm-hmm. So software and tech is a big part. There is, since the exit of Telerik, which was in 2014, we have seen more than 20 companies spin out of, Telerik by ex-employees who are getting into the market now. We just had very successful companies like GTM Hub, who raised capital by Series B from Inside Partners. We have also, Office R&D, which is a co-working management software, and we have Payhawk. We have a lot of other companies that are making a big footprint, and the good thing is that we see a really big activity of venture capital that is pouring in Eastern Europe. And, obviously Early Bird being one of our investors is one of those funds, but we also start to see a lot of local funds like 11 Ventures and Launch Hub, who are making really strong bets. And now they're getting to the life cycle of ending of their, let's say, first funds and seeing the exits and the returns being there. So it is kind of a very thriving and I would still say early ecosystem, but with a lot of potential. And another dynamics that is happening for Eastern Europe and Bulgaria is that, pretty much all the people that left the country as soon as we joined the EU, most of the people 2007 went and started studying, working in the US, in the UK, Netherlands, Spain, and so on, and Germany especially. We now start to see a lot of those people coming back because they got to a stage to be, at a stage where they're thinking about the family and so on, and they have had some experience working abroad for 10 years now, and they're now considering looking for an opportunity. And with Payhawk, we have been able to bring so many people back. We have so many employees that are starting to work from us, across Europe. And they're like, we actually had a story from a lady that, a Bulgarian one, started working from Germany, studied in Germany, worked in a German startup and a German VC, started working for Payhawk for 7-8 months. She came to a team building and she never left. She said, well, I'm actually staying, which is really nice.
Oh man, I absolutely love stories like that. And if we do have any founders listening from a startup in Bulgaria, Eastern Europe, in fact anywhere, I'd love to hear more stories like this. But we started today's podcast talking about your origin story. I'm now going to ask you, what was the soundtrack to your origin story? Is there a particular song or piece of music that always helps you or accompanied you in your career or helps you get your head in the zone? Is there a song and a story you can share with us today? And I'll add that song to the playlist.
I think one, obviously a song that has impacted you for long is, I think there is always, when I have been down very early on from my university years, I really liked the song Rockstar by Nickelback.
Yes.
This is one that has been always like, if you're down, obviously the text is very different, but this has helped me several times to just pump up, prepare for some things. And from time to time, I really like to listen to it.
Excellent. I think that's an important point as well, because we're all used to celebrating our successes and how well we've done, but we don't celebrate or talk about those moments where we are down and we need that little lift up. So I'll add that to the Spotify playlist. But before I let you go, for anyone listening wanting to learn more about Payhawk, what's the best way of doing that? And equally, if they want to contact your team, what's the best starting point?
Yeah, obviously head out to payhawk.com. That is the best way where customers can schedule a demo. There is also a self-service option for companies that just don't want to talk to salespeople and just don't want to experience the product themselves. We have a very fast onboarding process. Usually our average time of opening a new account to a customer is 4 hours. Which is a really, really fast process. So customers can actually start experiencing the product right away.
Well, so much I've loved about our conversation today. Yes, Payhawk reimagining the way payment works and also leading the digital transformation of the payment industry and how banks and fintechs could coexist in the future. But more than anything, your very personal story behind your success and how you got where you are today. But thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Thank you for having me.
I cannot thank today's guest for coming on here, sharing his story, and talking about how Payhawk reimagines the way payments work by simplifying and automating processes and building that end-to-end experience, and also leading the digital transformation of the payments industry and how banks and fintechs could coexist, working together rather than against each other. But more than anything, I also loved hearing about that startup scene in Eastern Europe and Bulgaria. And as always, I'd love to hear your personal stories. Wherever you're listening in this world, please, I implore you to email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram @NeilCHughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So keep those messages coming in. I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.